This is the Canton Repository for Monday, July 13th, 2020. My name is Pam, and let's begin with the area death notices. Donna Jewel Calusi, a memorial service will be held at Lemuel Funeral Home in Canton at 1 p.m. Tuesday, followed by graveside services at Sunset Hills Memorial Garden. Anthony G. Flex Jr., a Mass of Christian burial will be held at 11 a.m. on Tuesday at Christ the Servant Parish at Our Lady of Peace Catholic Church in Canton. Masks must be worn in the church and social distancing will be practiced. Arrangements are under the direction of Carlo Libby Funeral Home. Juanita J. Goodwin, 84, of Bolivar, died Thursday at Hennis Care Center in Bolivar. Graveside funeral services will be held Wednesday at 1 p.m. at Fort Lawrence Cemetery in Bolivar. Viewing will be held 1 hour prior to services at the cemetery. The Liebold Smith Funeral Home in Bolivar is handling the arrangements. Russell Allen Harris, 77, of Massillon, passed away quietly and peacefully on June 29th to be with our Lord and Savior. Arrangements are being handled by the Carlo Libby Funeral Home in Canton and are pending at this time. Lorraine E. Kaufman, age 92, of Canton, passed away Sunday in the Landings of Canton following an extended illness. There will be a private family service with interment in Meshimer Cemetery. Meshimer? Kriegbaum Sanders is assisting the family. Clinton R. Kyle, 45, of Beach City, passed away after a sudden illness July 1st. Friends may greet the family today, Monday, from 1 to 3 p.m. in Lancer Funeral Home in Beach City. Marianne Hosner Lucius, or Sweet Mary, 65, passed away on July 7th. A private service will be held at the convenience of the family. Reed is assisting the family. Karen L. Morris, 77, passed away on July 11th. In honor of Karen's wishes, there will be no services. Reed Funeral Home is assisting this family. Nell Tyson passed away. Services will be announced at a later date. That concludes the area death notices for July 13th. Let's move on to our first article. Building demo underway for US 62 makeover near Canton by Shane Hoover. Construction is expected to be completed by the fall of 2024. In Plain Township, demolition crews are steadily ripping down vacant houses and businesses to make room for the realignment of US Route 62. The work is part of a year-long project to ease congestion and reduce crashes on the busy highway between Maple Avenue Northeast and the State Route 43 Market Avenue North interchange. Building demolition started last month on the north side of Route 92, and a few lots already have been cleared. The houses and businesses have been boarded up for more than a year in anticipation of demolition. Ray Bertolini Trucking Company is tearing down the buildings, which is expected to cost $830,000, said Ray Marsh, spokesman for Ohio Department of Transportation District 4. The demolition work is to be completed by the winter. In all, 45 houses and 2 businesses will be removed, most of them from the north side of the highway. Pizza Oven, formerly at 1601 30th Street Northeast, has relocated to 5501 Market Avenue North. Vahilla Insurance, formerly at 1527 30th Street Northeast, has moved to 123 30th Street Northeast. Busy road. Each day, 38,700 vehicles travel the half-mile stretch where the 4-lane divided highway turns into a 5-lane urban road with stoplights, homes, and businesses, according to traffic statistics. ODOT has previously said the project area has an average of 120 crashes a year. Once the buildings are cleared, the state will shift Route 62 north of its present track. Part of the area formerly occupied by Route 62 will become 30th Street Northeast and provide access to properties that are now on the south side of Route 62 and west of St. Elmo Avenue Northeast, Marsh said. The estimated $12 million construction plan also calls for removal of traffic signals at Roland and Maple Avenue Northeast. Vehicles will be able to make right turns in and out of Maple from the north and south of Route 62. Ride-in, ride-out access to Roland will be from the south side of the highway. Installation of a traffic signal and eastbound and westbound center left turn lanes at St. Elmo Avenue. There will be a mix of concrete barrier and concrete medium to divide eastbound and westbound lanes except at the St. Elmo intersection. Elimination of Route 62 access from Gibbs and Gross Avenues. Addition of eastbound and westbound auxiliary lanes. The eastbound auxiliary will start from the Market Avenue North entrance ramp. The westbound auxiliary will start east of St. Elmo and exit onto 30th Street Northeast. There will be construction of noise barriers along some portions of Route 62. ODOT plans to complete construction by the fall of 2024, Marsh said. Our next article, Demonstrators Protest Cutting Down Bitzer Park Trees by Robert Wang. About 11 protesters demonstrated against the planned cutting down of dozens of trees at Bitzer Park as part of a planned reconstruction of the park in North Canton. They came late Saturday morning to Bitzer Park to speak for the trees, holding up signs that said, "Save the trees." Some of the roughly dozen demonstrators handed out leaflets to motorists stopped at red lights. They called for people to sign an online petition and contact city leaders to oppose the city's plan to cut down most of the park's trees. Occasionally, a motorist driving by honked. Protester Denise James, a city resident, said, based apparently on white markings on trees slated for removal, the city wants to take down 36 of the park's 46 trees. This is part of North Canton's plan, she said, to reconstruct the park and add a stage, pavilion, and new walkways so it can be a gathering place. James tied pink ribbons around trees with a white paint mark she believes were slated to be removed. Kristen Stuckey of North Canton held up her sign that said, "Save our trees. I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I value the trees. Live more than I value an amphitheater," Stuckey said. Susan Sharp of North Canton said the city's plans don't make sense. The trees provide shade. The trees provide life. There's no reason to cut down a healthy tree, said protester Susan Sharp. There's a lot of space in North Canton where they can build their bandstand. It doesn't have to be here. It's shady. It's peaceful. It's beautiful. And they're going to ruin it with a piece of concrete that we don't need. Protest organizer Joseph Blubaugh of North Canton said about 440 have signed his online petition to save the trees. "I think a park is not a park without trees. It's just more like a parking lot if it doesn't have trees," said Blubaugh. "Nobody's going to come to a park with no trees." Councilman defends the project. Councilman Darrell Revolt, at large, supports the project, which is expected to cost at least $450,000, funded mainly by state grant money from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. He said the pavilion with a stage will be smaller than a regular amphitheater and that the trees planted around the 1980s are designated for removal are approaching the end of their natural lives. In addition, he said the tree roots plus a deteriorating concrete limestone base have caused segments of the sidewalk on the east side of South Maple Street not to be level by as much as a couple of inches, posing a tripping hazard and potential lawsuits against the city. The contractor has to remove the trees in order to allow them to fix the sidewalk so it can be safe, he said. In addition, the contractor would make the sidewalk, which is barely ADA compliant, more level for wheelchairs. Revolt said at least 10 new trees, more mature than saplings, would be planted to replace many of the ones that were removed. Osborne wrote it would take a lifetime for any newly planted tree to replace what the park now has, and the space taken up by the pavilion would prevent the replanting of a like number of trees lost. Revolt said as far as he knows, no one yet has been seriously hurt due to the sidewalk. He confirmed that an arborist working for Rice Nurseries and local tree surgeon hired by the city examined the trees about 2 weeks ago and found that most of them were dying. Revolt said Councilman Doug Foltz from Ward 1, the director of Canton Parks and Recreation, had found that 10 trees originally planned for removal that could be saved. Blueball has requested that the city allow a professional urban forester evaluate the health of the trees. There's a contrary view. Former Councilman Chuck Osborne, who took part in the protest, wrote in an email that the city's claim about the sidewalk and trees conditions are fictitious. He said he didn't think the trees were damaging the sidewalk nor dying, except for one pine that's dead. He and his wife, Rita Palmer, criticized the city's plan to have events on what Osborne called consecrated designated memorial property. Bitzer Park has a brick memorial honoring North Canton residents who sacrificed their lives in the United States wars. I think it's just a waste of money, Osborne said, when they could locate it at Price Park and not lose a single tree. Revolt said the pavilion was not intended for an event as big as a band or orchestra concert, but for civic events like Memorial Day commemorations, the annual lighting of the city's Christmas tree, a demonstration, and an award ceremony for the North Canton YMCA's July 4th 5-mile race. He said Bitzer Park is in the center of North Canton, so that was an appropriate location for the pavilion. It would be nice to have a small place where people could sit, a place with speakers that everyone could see and everyone could hear, said Revolt. Blueball's wife, Katie Diebold, said, I have no problem against the amphitheater, but there's no reason why they can't do the plan around the existing trees. She accused city officials of not being transparent about their plans for the trees, and then they sprung on us this Bitzer Park plans. They've had no input from the community, and again, they fast-tracked it. Revolt said council has publicly discussed the Bitzer Park project and the need to take down trees since 2012. He said he and Mayor Stephen Welder met with Blueball to hear his concerns. This notion that somehow that this was passed through in the dark of night is bogus, Revolt said. Just the simple power of observation would tell you a number of trees are no longer safe and need to come down. Blueball addressed council on June 8th and June 22nd, objecting to the removal of trees from the park. City Administrator Pat DiOrio said he asked council to approve the soliciting of bids as an emergency measure so the city could find out as quickly as possible how much the project would cost amid the pandemic. Revolt said bids came back from contractors last week, and all of them were above the city engineer's estimate. The city plans to rebid the project, which is now on hold. Ohio has a ban on mass gatherings of more than 10 people during the pandemic, but activities considered covered by the First Amendment, such as protests, are exempt. Well, let's move on to our next article. Parents seek answers for son's sudden unexplained death to help others, by Betty Lynn Fisher. James Ward had the biggest smile. The fourth grader at Strasser Elementary School in Jackson Local School was a healthy 10-year-old who played football, basketball, and lacrosse. He wanted to be an architect when he grew up and loved playing with his Legos. But on the morning of March 12, 2019, James was found dead when his mother went to wake him up for school. His final death certificate listed his death as a seizure, but only because James had some minor seizure activity the summer before his death. But he had no evidence of a seizure at the time of his death, his parents said. For the first 6 months after his death, the cause of death was listed as a strep infection, which went to his heart. There are no findings. Nobody knows what happened to our little boy, said Joanna Ward. James' death is a sudden, unexplained death in childhood, or an SUDC for short, a category of death for children 12 months to 18 years of age. It is similar to sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, which is typically death in an infant under 12 months. The morning of March 12, 2019 was a normal Tuesday morning, said Joanna Ward. She was getting her 4 kids up and ready for school. After she woke up the younger kids, she went downstairs to James' basement room to wake up Jamesy, as she called him. He was laying face down, and I could tell the way he looked. I put my kiddos down and immediately called 911. They told me to pick him up and how to do chest compressions, said Ward. When the paramedics arrived, they looked at James, pulled me off of him, scooped up our little boy, and put him in the ambulance. Joanna called her ex-husband, Ryan. I remember screaming and crying, and then I called my mom. Those were the only 2 phone calls I made, she said. A neighbor stayed with the Ward's three younger children, and Joanna met Ryan at Altman Hospital. By the time James' parents arrived at the hospital, they said they knew he was gone. First responders later told Joanna Ward that they would have called the death at a house for an adult, but they knew for me and my kiddos in the house, they needed to try, she said. 2 days before his death, James had finished an antibiotic for strep throat. For 6 months, the family was told James died of that strep infection, which went to his heart. They had their other three kids do EKGs to check their hearts, but when the final autopsy report came back, it listed a seizure as the cause of death, which still dumbfounds James' parents. Testing did not find any seizure activity, and no virus or bacteria was found in his heart or brain, they said. He was a completely healthy little boy, his mom said. The Friday before his death, Ryan Ward took James to his first concert with his sister Kaylee, who was 8 at the time. "I have the cutest video of him," said Ryan. Ryan and Joanna said their last good memories of their son is what keeps them going. Ryan had taken James on a father-son weekend at an indoor BMX bike park 4 weeks before his death. "It was just a time where it was bonding time for us," said Ryan. "He was 10, but you could talk to him about life. He had such an understanding of things. When I think of myself when I was 10, his intelligence level and understanding was just so great." Joanna Ward remembers fondly her last night with her son. "We danced in the living room. I tried playing Fortnite with him, but he wouldn't let me hold the controller. When it was time for bed, I tucked him into bed and prayed with him and gave him kisses. As I was walking out of his room, he said, 'Mom, one more hug.' I gave him that one more hug," Joanna said. After James' death, his parents heard even more stories about his kind and compassionate nature. James helped with something called Polar Bear Helpers at school. He helped third graders, and one day he wrote, "You matter," on the board for the students. "That's been our slogan," said Joanna Ward. "Those are his words he left behind." The family also used hashtag #SmileLikeJames as they and others shared stories about James after his death, including on a Facebook group with the same name. Ryan wrote a song, "Not With Me," with a friend and released it on music platforms in March before the first anniversary of James's death. The Wards have connected with an international nonprofit organization, the SUDC Foundation, which is working to promote awareness, advocate for research, and provide support for those affected by sudden unexplained death in childhood. SUDC is a category of death that eludes science today, said Laura Gould Crandall, Foundation president. "It is probably a group of children who died from different causes, and via research, we're hoping we can identify them in order to explain what they are and have clinical medicine help us treat them and prevent these deaths from occurring in other children." According to the data from the Center for Disease Control, about 400 children every year between 1 and 18 die suddenly without explanation. The majority are toddlers, but some are older, like James Ward, Crandall said. The organization started in 2014, but a registry for families who have experienced sudden unexplained death in a child has been gathering information for years before that, and several parties combined to start the foundation. While more than $500 million has been spent by the National Institutes of Health to research SIDS over the last few decades, there have been no targeted grants to explain SUDC, said Crandall. The group has an online petition to try to convince the NIH to provide research funding for SUDC. Their website is www.sudc.org. The group has several goals. A group of researchers from New York University, Columbia, Mayo Clinic, and pathologists across the country are asking families to enroll in the registry and research collaborative, which will review the child's death, perform a genetic analysis on a sample from an autopsy, study the risks involved in the unexplained deaths, and take blood samples from parents to potentially identify risks in other family members. The foundation also offers bereavement and advocacy services, peer support, and DNA banking to provide additional opportunities for research. Samples from James Ward are at the DNA bank to be used in the study, and Ryan Ward said he and Joanna plan to donate samples, but the COVID-19 pandemic has caused some delays. It has been 22 years since Crandall's 15-month-old daughter died of unexplained reasons. I was shocked with everything, including the lack of awareness and research going on. Crandall said she's glad there are families like the Wards who take their grief and try to turn it into something positive by giving other people hope, raising funds for research, and pushing for advocacy. They're trying to make the future a brighter place for kids through their tragedy. That's a very meaningful way of handling something like this. It helps soothe your soul when you're helping someone else through this, said Crandall. Waves of grief overcome Joanna Ward at times, but she also has joy in remembering her son and looking at the faces of her other kids, Kaylee, now 10, Riley, 5, and Jackson, 3. James would have turned 12 on June 17th. I feel our son. I feel him in everything. I feel him in the sun, the wind. I feel him. He amazes me with his beauty, Joanna said. I say this to people all the time. As parents, we can only hope we leave a legacy for our children, but we have the very rare opportunity to carry our son's beautiful legacy. I choose to do so with dignity and grace, and live and smile and remember him and talk about him. I feel most alive when I talk about him. To be his mama has been an honor. My apologies for being so emotional. That was a difficult read for me. Moving on, our next article is titled How Our Neighbors Spent Their Stimulus Money by Benjamin Dewar. Puppies and crematory plots were among the items Stark County area residents purchased with their federal stimulus checks. Mandy and Jeff Snyder's 5 boys shared 2 bedrooms in the family's Canton home. The rooms needed some work after years of wear and tear, but like most households, the Snyders didn't have the money readily available to pay for remodel expenses. Then again, it's not every day the federal government issues tax-free checks to Americans, encouraging them to use it on expenses or to help boost the economy. For us, it really was kind of a bonus, said Mandy Snyder, who added that $1,275 of their stimulus money paid for federal taxes owed for 2019. We didn't really need it. It allowed us, though, to do something we might not have done. Their older sons, both young adults, also contributed stimulus money into the project. Since April, the Internal Revenue Service has sent stimulus checks to individuals and families across the country to help them after the coronavirus outbreak devastated the national and state economies. The checks, which contain no spending stipulations, are worth $1,200 for individual earnings less than $75,000. $2,400 for married couples earning less than $150,000, and $500 per dependent child. In June, an estimated 35 million people still have not received a check. The U.S. Census Bureau has kept track of how Americans have spent their stimulus money. The Bureau's recent Household Pulse survey found that the majority of the 73,472 survey respondents used their stimulus check on household expenses. About 80% bought food, while 78% paid rent or mortgages and/or utilities. In localizing the survey, the Canton Repository found readers made a variety of decisions with their money. About 40% of the 338 people who voted in the online poll indicated they saved a good chunk of their stimulus for future needs. Another 31% spent it on rent and mortgages, groceries, and utilities. 9% paid for household supplies, with the remaining 20% of the voters selecting other. Some, like Mary Drexler and Jody Miller, made once-in-a-lifetime purchases. Puppies and plots. Drexler of New Philadelphia said he and his wife used some of their money to pay down credit card debt. They also donated to an Akron street mission run by a relative and set aside $800 for future needs. The Drexlers, who have 4 children, also bought a Siberian Husky puppy. They're loving the new addition, said Drexler, a Canal Fulton native who teaches math at Tuscarora Central Catholic High School in New Philadelphia and formerly taught in the Akron school system for 16 years. He added, but there was no way we'd get a $1,400 puppy without the check. Jody Miller and her husband Sherman put their stimulus money towards death, theirs. The Canton couple bought cemetery plots and put a down payment on headstones. We definitely could have used the money to fix something, but I said to him, "We've been talking about cemeteries and plots, so let's just do it," Jody Miller said. It's not a pleasant thing to do. The couple does not have children, and they were concerned about the added stress to find and pay for plots if one of them died. "Now we know that's taken care of," said Jody Miller, whose husband works for the Canton Repository. Second stimulus? There has been talk of a second round of stimulus funding ever since the first checks were issued. To date, the second check remains elusive, stuck in congressional debate. President Donald Trump and various federal lawmakers have voiced support for more stimulus, but how much and what other stipulations might be put in place has kept the federal checkbook closed. "I don't think anyone would be sad to get more money," Mandy Snyder said, "but how could they do it so it gets to people who really need it versus people who don't?" Snyder, her husband, and their adult children were deemed essential workers and kept working through Ohio's stay-at-home orders, collecting paychecks. Same with Drexler and Miller. "We don't need a second one, but we'll gladly take one," Drexler said. "But at the same time, I'm sure there are a lot of people who need a second check, and in many cases, a first check." Well, this next article is titled "Around Town, Stark Women Make Strides for Pride Month" by Nicole Sims. Stride for Pride participants. Photos are courtesy of Olivia Baxter, which I'm sure you can see online. Sometimes changing the world isn't possible, but changing your corner of it is. That's what Olivia Baxter and her girlfriend Taylor Helbig believe. For the past several months, the coronavirus has canceled almost every event in the nation, including Pride events. Baxter and Helbig wanted to still celebrate the LGBTQ community and raise funds at the same time. This was where the Stride for Pride 5K Walk Run was born. This year marks the 51st anniversary of the Stonewall riots on June 28, 1969. Police raided Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, New York. It was a series of spontaneous, violent demonstrations by members of the gay community and is considered the beginning of the modern fight for gay rights in America. Stride for Pride took place June 27th at the Middle Branch Trail. Due to social distancing, people walked or ran at staggered times, about 50 in all. They sold t-shirts and handed out treat bags. The event took 3 weeks to organize. Shannon Oritz, founder of Light After Loss, donated the treat bags, and Carter's Copy Center donated mile marker signs. They raised more than $200, which will be donated to LGBTQ organizations. Another event will be held in 2021. Donations still are being accepted via the Venmo account at Olivia Baxter. Next, a small article. Canton resident Fonda Mercer has been selected as Mercy Medical Center's most recent star performer employee. Mercer is a patient access representative for Mercy Physical Therapy. She was nominated for her persistence for 4 months to obtain insurance authorizations on behalf of one patient who denied therapy after a surgical procedure. "I chose the medical profession because I love to take care of people in any way," Mercer said. "I knew I could not be a nurse or a doctor, so the next best thing was to be able to help in other ways by doing what I do best in the front office and insurance area." The Star Performer Program is the hospital's employee recognition and reward program. Employees, volunteers, and staff are nominated each month for demonstrating outstanding performance, being a team player, going above and beyond, being creative and innovative, and for championing service excellence. Next up, a group of University of Mount Union students took second place in the National Undergraduate Design Competition. It was part of the Summer Biomechanics, Bioengineering, and Biotransport Conference held virtually this year. Students have to submit their project's abstract in March, describing the design of new devices related to rehabilitation services or assisted technologies. Teams who were accepted into the competition then had to record a 5-minute presentation for the judges and virtual attendees in May. The Mount Union team was named one of 3 finalists on June 17th and gave its final presentation on June 20th. The students, all of whom have since graduated from the mechanical engineering program, were Matthew Honecker, Masashi Nishiguchi, Logan Polachek, and Hannah Wharton. To learn more about the prosthetic leg project and other senior design projects in Mount Union's mechanical engineering program, visit www.mountunionedu/mechanical-engineering. Well, you can send tips about acts of kindness, antidotes, honors, or other items of interest to Nicole Sims around town, the Repository, 500 Market Avenue, South Canton, Ohio, 44702. Or you can email her at necole.sims@cantonrep.com. Or you can fax them to 330-454-5745. Well, friends, that concludes the reading of the Canton Repository for Monday, July 13th. This is Pam saying, be blessed, make it a great day.